The vision of radical sending that we're trying to communicate in this book is a vision of a church that's in some ways turned inside out. A lot of people talk about the inside out classroom these days, where the students don't gather to listen to a lecture and then go home to do homework, but instead listen to the lecture on video at home and then gather to do the work of learning. And in a way, that's kind of what I'd love to see happen with our churches, is turning inside out, understanding the gathering, which is really important and nurturing and sustaining, but understanding that gathering to have the purpose of equipping people to be sent out as the church itself, to understand ourselves not simply as the church gathered, but also as the church scattered, wherever we are, bringing Christ's presence with us, in us, to the situations that we deal with every day in every aspect of our lives. The purpose of gathering is to be equipped so that we can be sent. And as the congregation understands itself not simply as a place to gather, but as a place to gather in order that people are fed and forgiven and washed and blessed and dismissed and sent out into the world, being Christ wherever they are. That's radical sending. This grows out of the two great sacraments of our faith, out of baptism, which is our commissioning to being Christ's ambassadors in the world, taking on the work of reconciliation that Christ and the church calls us to. The other important sacrament is Eucharist. We give thanks the same way Jesus gave thanks. Jesus took bread, gave thanks, broke it, and gave it. And in the same way, we're called to do that same thing with our lives, to take our lives, give thanks for our lives, break our lives open in ways perhaps that we don't imagine, and then give it away. And we can't do that without the strength and the courage and the encouragement and the love that we find in that gathered body. The most important part of the Eucharist is the very last. Go in peace to love and serve the Lord. The worship is ended. The service begins. Get out of here and go be Jesus. That's the vision that we have of radical sending. Fletcher uses as his model the idea of church being a base camp. And he knows a little bit about trekking in the Himalayan mountains. The base camp, when you're on a trek, doesn't exist for the people who are inside the base camp. The base camp exists for the hikers. The hikers depend on the base camp to be the place that they're replenished, the place that they're healed, the place, even most important, the place that they get to tell the stories of their encounters out on the mountains, the beautiful things they've seen, the heroic things that they've seen, the difficult places that they've had, and how do I get around that, or what do I do about that? All of that takes place at the base camp, but the hikers aren't called to stay in the base camp telling the stories over and over. The hikers are called to be out on the mountains doing what hikers do, which for all of us is different. It's how we choose to live our lives. But being out, being the church scattered, the church gathered is important to allow us, to strengthen us, to empower us to do what Christ is calling us to do. But the church scattered, I believe, is what Christ had in mind when he said, go. Just like our presiding bishop says, go. That's what we're called to do.